Okay, welcome to Photosynthesis. This is our lab for this week. So you're going to start out by having a discussion with the students, asking them what they know about plants. All right, so here's our, I'm such an artist. Here's our plant. Okay, we've got leaves on the plant. Looks like a hand with fingernails. All right, so there's our leaves, and you're going to ask the students, all right, so how does the environment affect how plants function and how they do photosynthesis? And so what I want to know is what goes in and what comes out for photosynthesis. Now, a lot of your students are going to know, but I want you to really throw doubt at them if they're saying things and you're like, are you sure? Is that what they really need? And so obviously the first thing that we know plants need is sunlight. So we know that sunlight is going in, right? And we know that we need to water plants. So we have our rain, and that's going in. It's raining from the sun. So water's going in. Anything else going in? And this is where if you don't get a response, ask the students to talk to each other and have them talk in groups and then have them come back and share. The thing that they often miss is a lot of them want to say that it needs soil, and technically soil doesn't really do anything except provide an anchoring point for them, provide a habitat for some of the fungi that grows around their roots, and provide some of the very small micronutrients. So we get nitrogen and things like that coming up through the soil, but that's it. And we want to dispel that myth that the plants are somehow eating the soil in large amounts, because that's not true. So we do get nitrogen, and that's really about it from the soil. And so the main component that people often miss is the air that's going in, right? And so then you ask, what is it in the air that the plants need? And maybe they'll know it, maybe they won't. But CO2, they actually need, and it turns out plants also use oxygen, just like we do. Okay, so they're getting that from the air. All right, so then we've got our picture. We're not going to write a formula for photosynthesis because that's too detailed for now. What we just want them to understand is that we're putting sunlight, water, air in, and then the question is, what are we getting out of it? What is coming out? And the answer is that we get growth of the tree, so we're getting biomass, right? And that growth, what is it actually? And hopefully students from our lectures before or just from common knowledge know that the woody tissue and the plants, leaves, and all of that are sugars of some sort, either as starch, as cellulose, other woody tissue. So we're getting sugars out of it. Anything else? Maybe some of them know that oxygen is coming back out, maybe not, but we can actually help them to that. So we're getting some oxygen out of the process. Okay. All right, so once you had a discussion and you have this picture on the board, then you're going to ask students, all right, so if we wanted to manipulate photosynthesis rates, what could we manipulate in this picture? And really the answer is everything. We can manipulate any of the inputs or outputs, but in a laboratory setting, what we have here, what can we manipulate? Okay, so we can manipulate, we can't really manipulate the micronutrients, but can we manipulate the water? Yes, but remind them today we're using aquatic plants. So you kind of can't give them more water in a timely fashion, and they just have to be in water. So yeah, theoretically we can manipulate the water. I'm just going to put a dotted line around it, but you're not going to manipulate the water here. But we could manipulate the amount of air it's getting, and specifically for the growth of the sugars, we can manipulate this. Okay, the CO2. We can manipulate the light that the plants are getting. Okay, what other things could we manipulate though? So it's not just the inputs and outputs, but there are some other things we can manipulate. One of them being like temperature. Can we change the temperature? And you might ask the students, what would happen if I did change the temperature? How does that affect anything really, any living organism? And maybe, if students think about it for a while, they might think that your enzymes run faster when the temperature is higher. And so you could change maybe the process by doing that. Okay, so other things we might manipulate, they can be creative. Honestly, they could do whatever they want. We don't have soil, in this particular plant because, again, it's an aquatic plant. All right, so once you've had a discussion about that, then the next question is, how do we know if photosynthesis rates have changed? How do we know that we've actually affected photosynthesis? So, in other words, these are the independent variables that we're manipulating. So the question is, what dependent variable could we look for to know that things are changing? All right, what can we look for to see that things are changing? Now, obviously the best way to see change in photosynthesis is by the growth of the plant. But we have 3 hours to do this in, so obviously we can't measure any noticeable growth in the plant. So is there any other outputs that we can measure? And hopefully students can see that here's an output that we can measure, is the output of oxygen. Okay, yeah, because we can't do biomass. So that's what we're going to measure today, is the output of oxygen. Now, if students ask, you might want to be specific that we're not actually going to measure output of oxygen per se. We're measuring the output of air volume, the change in air volume around the plant. So keep in mind that plants also do cellular respiration, so they use oxygen and they give off CO2. But with the photosynthesis, they're going to be using CO2 and giving off oxygen more than the other way around. So really the change in air that we're seeing is not just the production of oxygen, because you have then oxygen being used. So it's just a change in metabolism, a change in the balance between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. You don't need to tell that to students, but if students are like, wait, don't plants do it? Yes, they do other processes, and so it's just a measuring a change in metabolism. Okay? And photosynthesis are the things we're messing with, so that's going to be primarily responsible for the change in metabolism. All right, so once you had the discussion, you're going to have them set up their experiments. And there's a couple of just things you need to remember about this experiment that will help it go more smoothly. So I'm actually going to pause this and start the experiment on another tape.